Hello everyone, in this presentation I will explain the case cohort study design. At first I will explain what a case cohort study design is, including an example of a case cohort study. After that I will describe the advantages and disadvantages of the study design and then compare it with a cohort and case control study design. A case cohort study is a case control study nested within a cohort study in which the controls are sampled at the beginning of the study period. Traditionally, prospective cohort studies have large sample sizes, which make it too expensive and time-consuming to analyze all data on all subjects. But case cohort studies are a solution to this time efficiency problem because the data which will be used during analysis is only collected in a sample of the full cohort, which is called a subcohort. To elaborate more on the design of this study, a case cohort study is defined by selecting a subcohort from the original cohort at start of follow-up. This subcohort is free from disease at beginning and is a representative sample of all members of the cohort. In the analysis, the cases that occur in the subcohort will be included. Also, the cases that occur outside the subcohort are included. So the final sample consists of all cases and the subcohort. This is an example of a case cohort study which is titled The Non-Transferrin Bound Iron and Risk of Coronary Heart Disease in Postmenopausal Women. The aim of this research was to study the causal link between iron and the risk of coronary heart disease. The original cohort was a population-based sample of 11,471 postmenopausal women aged 49 to 70 years, and they were enrolled in 1993 to 1997. They were followed up for 4 years in which 185 cases occurred, which were defined as coronary heart disease events. The final sample included all 185 cases and a random sample of 10% from the baseline cohort to serve as a subcohort. The cases included will contribute person time until they experience the event. Biochemical measurements were only performed on a subcohort and all cases to measure iron variables, which made this study more efficient in time and money. Now I will list the advantages of a case cohort study. The main advantage of this design is that full covariate data are only needed on the cases and subcohort members, and not the whole original cohort, saving time and money. Another advantage is that risk ratio and rate ratio can be measured in a case cohort study. The researcher samples from the members of the full cohort, which is a representative sample of persons instead of person years. So the time spent at risk is not taken into consideration. So the odds ratio from a case cohort study should be viewed as a valid estimate of the risk ratio and not of the rate ratio. However, when disease incidence is low, which often happens in a case control study, the risk ratio approximates the rate ratio. Therefore, both sampling of persons and of person years is possible in a case cohort study. And it is also still possible to estimate risk or rate ratios from a case cohort study when loss to follow-up occurs, because there is data available on the time spent at risk, assuming that loss to follow-up is not associated with exposure or disease risk. Now the disadvantages of a case cohort study. A case cohort study is hardly ever described in detail in standard epidemiology textbooks. Their concept is not very well understood, to the point that some journals would reject the case cohort study because the control group includes the cases. Another disadvantage is that because of the overlap of membership in the cases and control group, you need to select more controls in a case cohort study than in a case control study with the same number of cases if you want to achieve the same amount of statistical precision. The design is also not suitable when exposure changes over time. It is also difficult for readers to understand the weighting procedures used in analysis compared to retrospective studies. The other designs to which I will compare the case cohort design to are a prospective cohort study, a case control study, and a nested case control study. A case cohort is compared to a cohort study more efficient because the data has already been collected for another purpose. It is cheaper because there's no need to follow people over time. It is faster because the outcomes have already occurred. And a case cohort study is compared to case control studies even more efficient in time and money because only a sample of the full cohort is analyzed. Also, you are able to estimate the risk and rate ratios instead of only odds ratios in case control studies. Compared to a nested case control study, in a case cohort study, the same subcohort can be used to study different disease outcomes. Within a nested case control study, it is only possible to study a single outcome measure because the controls are time-matched to the cases. In a case cohort study, you can estimate risk or rate ratios and rate differences. This is an advantage of the case cohort design over the nested case control study, where you typically only estimate relative measures and not absolute measures. This is a summary of the case cohort study design. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.